pastry can sound a little bit daunting to make from scratch, and you know what, it is, but I'm cheating. I'm going to do a rough puff. Now, to start, you need about 350 grams of pastry plain flour. This is going to give it a really lovely flakiness. I'm going to do mine in a food processor, but by all means, you can do this by hand. This is 60 grams of butter that I've cubed, and it's quite cold. When you're making pastry, always remember the butter needs to be cold so it does come together. You don't want it to be really sloppy. Butter goes in. We need to season this with a pinch of salt. And I'm going to pulse this 10 to 12 times until the crumb forms, and then I'm going to add some water just so it comes together. So just keep an eye on it. You may need a little bit more or a little bit less depending on the flour you use. Now this is looking perfect. See how it just sticks together? Just like that. That is the dough that we're looking for. It's not too wet and it's not too dry. Now I'm going to get a little extra flour and just flour the board and gather it with your hands. And now I'm just going to shape it into a rectangle. So bring it together. And with a rolling pin, we want to roll this out gently. So I'm just going to take it a little bit further so it's thinner than this. It's looking good. Now this is where it gets interesting and where the idea of puff pastry comes into this. We need to fold in butter. Again, the butter does need to be cold, and I've grated the butter. This has been in the freezer for a few hours, and the colder it is, the better the results are going to be. So you do need to work quite fast here. I'm going to add this butter, about half of it, to 2/3 of this sheet of pastry. Spread it out evenly. So I'm going to fold down the top third and then stretch that out a little bit and then fold one more time. So we've got those layers of butter, pastry, butter, pastry. Now I want to do this one more time, so I'm going to roll this out into another rectangle and then do exactly the same thing. Then I'm going to wrap it in a bit of cling film and pop it in the fridge for an hour so it can firm up. Now, while the pastry is chilling in the fridge, I can start with my toppings. I've got a hot pan. I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil, and then a few big handfuls of mushrooms can go in, and I'm going to fry them until they're slightly golden and a little bit soft, and then I want to cool them down completely. While that's happening, I can also get on to some pepperoni salami. I'm just going to slice it really thinly. Now the pastry's been resting for 1 hour in the fridge. I'm just warming it up just a little bit with my fingers, and now we can roll it out and start assembling this. And you can see the bits of butter throughout it. When you're rolling it, it's called laminating. So you're actually squeezing the butter into the pastry, which means it's going to be really crumbly and flaky. Now we need to roll this out. So just using your rolling pin, it is a little bit tough at the beginning, but just be patient with it. And as I roll, I can see nice big lumps of butter. That's good. That's a good sign that this pastry has folded and laminated the right way. So it's about 2 millimeters thick. Now what I'm going to do is just roll it up onto my rolling pin and get it out of the way. Then get a round tray. This is a non-stick tray. If not, you could put a bit of baking paper and then roll it very gently out onto the tray. And now for the really fun part, which is adding the toppings. I'll start with a little bit of tomato paste or puree. This is a combination of both. A few tablespoons. And just like you're making a pizza at home, spread it out. You don't want it to be too thick or it will make the base soggy at the end. So just a small, thin layer. Now I'm going to add the mushrooms that have cooled down, and I'm adding all of these mushrooms. It's always a good idea to fry the mushrooms first so they don't go too watery when you add them to the pastry. Now for the salami. If you wanted to keep this completely vegetarian, of course, you could add all different types of vegetables and some marinated artichokes. These are just quarters. Oh, it's looking good now. And then lots of cheese. This is buffalo mozzarella cheese. I'm just going to tear big pieces for this crostata. I'm going to add about 3/4 of this mozzarella ball. And for a little bit of seasoning, some dried oregano and some olives. Now I'm going to prepare an egg wash to make it golden brown, straight into a bowl. Crush that yolk and then give it a mix. And now I'm going to fold over the corners. You can be really rough with this, just folding it over, almost crimping it slightly. And keep folding, crimping, so we've got a perfect circle that looks almost better than a pizza. Right, let's add that wash. So very lightly, brushing the pastry only. And now just a little bit of salt just on the pastry. This is going to give it a slight crunchiness when it comes out. And you don't need too much, just crush it through your fingers there. And a hint of extra virgin olive oil just over the top to finish it off. Now this goes into the oven, a hot oven, 200 degrees for about 20 minutes, or keep an eye on it until that pastry is really golden brown. Now I've allowed this to cool a little bit. You don't want to cut into it straight away because the inside's quite hot. So cool it down for about 5 to 10 minutes. I'm just going to take it off this tray onto my chopping board. And then I'm going to slice a nice generous wedge out for me to have a taste. So down the centre, listen to this. See how flaky and it's just crumbling apart? This is so perfect. If you're like me and love focaccia or the dough to be slightly thick when you're having a pizza, then you're really going to love this style of crostata. Yes, you can absolutely do it with sweet ingredients, but I love it with gooey cheese, salami, and mushrooms. That is rough puff perfection.